This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Everybody, welcome all our Torah Anytime viewers. So this is the deal. First of all, we would like to welcome and welcome in the future. Invite, that's the word I'm looking for. Thank you, me. We would like to invite everybody to join us at 1601, very responsible here, 1601 Quentin Road, every Thursday for women at the BJX location. Okay.
Every Thursday? What happened?
Every Thursday? I didn't say every Thursday?
Yeah, but like we have to stay.
Yeah, I think it's officially, we're staying here unofficially, officially. So until, so right now, Baruch Hashem, we have the place, so we'll see how long this goes with the mercy of Hashem and the kindness of Hashem. Okay, so now, I just said location. Okay. Okay, but I was also like thinking, did I not say it? Okay, so now, it's almost like I should really stop this and start it again, right? But I'm not. But for the online world, that does happen from time to time. So they are missing out, so join us. Okay, so, and also we are learning through the Fuash Lema to Yechezkel Ben Tzila. And one last thing to mention. Last week we started our foundation of faith, the 13 principles of faith. And my intent was to continue with it until Shavuot, and then maybe do like one or two classes on Shavuot, closer to Shavuot, and then possibly if I needed to finish the series afterwards. For some reason, this past Shabbat, I was thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I haven't done the hidden, like we've done the hidden story of different. We did the story of Purim, the story of Ruth. We did the story of Pesach. We did a bunch of different. And I'm like, we haven't done it in a while. Maybe I should do the one on Matan Torah. And for some reason, something twitched in my brain. I'm like, yes, we have to do it. I'm like, we're stopping all the series now. We're focusing on it. And one of the things that I wanted to do is when we did, I still remember this, when we did the hidden story of Pesach, or the hidden story of Exodus, we did it in 3 classes, but each class was like 2 hours long. Yeah. And so you know how many times I was apologizing for the people, like, I'm sorry, but we have to continue it. So I'm like, and I had to rush through it. So I want to do things right. Let's do it slow. We'll start now, and hopefully we'll be done in time of Shavuot, hopefully a little bit, sooner. So, that being said, so we're going to put on hold the Foundation of Faith series, and we're going to do the story of Shavuot, the story of Matan Torah. Now, before we even begin this, there's a very interesting pasuk in Devarim, in Deuteronomy, chapter 4, verse 9. It says, Rak hishamer lecha ushmo nafshecha. You have to be, the Torah is written now, and it says, you have to beware and watch yourself, pen tishkachas advarim sharo anecha, lest you forget what your eyes saw. And then to finish off the pasuk, and you have to teach your children and your children's children what you saw. So the Ramban learns now from this verse. What is it? This is referring to the giving of the Torah on Har Sinai. There is a positive and a negative commandment in this pasuk. Number 1, there's a negative commandment: you shall never ever forget what your eyes saw on Har Sinai. That's a negative commandment. The positive commandment is that you have to teach your children and your children's children what you saw on Har Sinai. Now, obviously, we're not speaking about the generation. We're quite a little bit, a distance from our generation from that saw Matan Torah. However, we still have the same obligations. We cannot forget it, and we have to teach it to our children. Now, how could somebody go and teach it to their children, the story of Shavuot, the story of Matan Torah, the story of Har Sinai, if they don't know the details themselves? So, that being said, the way that I want to do it is actually go into this story. I'm actually going to continue where we left off by the hidden story of Pesach. So we started off with the hidden story of Pesach it's 2 years ago, I think. 2 years ago, we finished off the story that we went through. There was the 10 plagues, and there was the exodus of the Jews went to out of Egypt. Then they got chased into the sea, and when they chased into the sea, the Egyptians chased after them, and then the Egyptians went, and the Egyptians got drowned. And after they got drowned, the Egyptians, their wealth, their gold, got thrown onto the shores, and the Jewish people were collecting the treasures. Thank you for correcting myself, me. All right, we're talking to myself a lot today. They were collecting all the treasure. So and then they sang Shirah, they sang praise to God. This is where we left off from 2 years ago. So, hope you remember that part. But you can always review it on TorahAnytime.com. So we're going to continue from that story. Now, before we actually begin with that story, there's a very interesting, mashal that I've read. That actually I read this quite a few times. There was once a king, and this king had a princess. And this was not taken by Disney yet. There was once a king that was taken by they had a princess, and he wanted to find the most suitable match for his daughter. So he decided that instead he wasn't interested in money, he wasn't interested in politics, he wasn't interested in the one thing that he was interested in, he wanted a strong character, somebody who had intelligence, somebody who was able to fight for what was right. So he decided he was going to devise a plan. What he did was that he built this impenetrable castle for his daughter. And he placed his daughter inside. Then he sent, declarations to all over the world, and he said, whoever can get into this castle, they will be able to marry my daughter. They'll be the richest person in the kingdom. They'll be the next king. So when you hear a thing like this, every suitable, match came up. Even non-suitable matches probably came up as well. They came over there and they said, you know what? Let's go find my Basharat. Let me go find, this is the one that I'm supposed to be marrying. I'm supposed to marry the princess. And they're going and they're trying very hard. Now they're looking, the entire castle, there was no windows. There was no doors. It was built on a slant that they couldn't even, not the slant this way, the slant this way. So they couldn't even climb up on it. And it was made with very slippery type of brick. So they couldn't even grab onto anything. So you had all the strong warriors, all the princes, all the big businessmen. They came over there. They're walking around. They were scanning the entire area. They even tried to break it down. They tried to go and come with battering rams, and they tried to go and break it down. The wall was so strong, there was nothing that they could do. So after a few months, everybody came, everybody left. Then there was one guy who came over there. He was looking at it from the distance. He was like, there's got to be a way. If the king did this, he didn't make something impossible, because the daughter is actually inside there with all the maidservants. There must be a reason, and there must be a way, an entrance to go in. So he goes and he starts using his intelligence. He started to go looking around to see where there will be some sort of opening. He looked the entire area, he scanned the entire area, there was nothing, everything was solid. So what he did was he went inch by inch with like a little magnifying glass to see maybe there's something going on over there. He went once, he went twice around, he couldn't find anything, but he did not give up. He kept on going and going. After a long time at it, he finally found something that looked very odd. He saw like a little crack, like a little crevice that was going in the bricks. And he sort of followed it, and it came to like a little small hole. And he's like, this got to be something over here. So he took a little chisel, and he started chiseling out the little stones that were there. And he realized that those stones came out very easily. And he took out one stone after another stone until he realized it was a small window. So he stuck his head into the window, and he started screaming, princess, princess, you got to come help me. I've been here for such a long time. I found the window, but I can't get inside. This window is so small. So the princess, hears, someone screaming. She comes to the window and she says, listen, he says, you did well. You did better than everybody else. But I have faith in you. Keep on going. Keep on searching. Keep on finding. And you're going to find there's a door somewhere. So with the motivation that he got for the princess, he's like, you know what? I found the window. I'm going to be able to find the door. He goes, and again, he's looking for that small little crack that he could find. He goes one time around, two times around. Finally, he finds some sort of like crack that he sees along the lines. He's like, could this be it? And he starts to peel off one rock, and it's similar to the rocks in the window. And he starts taking off one rock after another rock after another rock until there's a door over there. So he goes over to the princess and says, listen, princess, I found the window. I found the door, but the door is locked. How am I supposed to get in there? The princess says, I have faith in you. Don't worry about it. You're going to be able to go and find the entrance to the door. So somehow he's able to get into the door, into this door, and he opens the door. He gets into the castle. The first guy finally gets into the castle. When he gets into the castle, what does he see? 1,000 other doors. He's like, you got to be kidding me. He's like, now I'm finally inside. Now I'm supposed to do it. So he goes and he starts screaming for the princess again. He screams and screams and screams. Suddenly the princess pokes her head from a big balcony, and she says, yeah, what can I do for you? He says, listen, I found the door. I found the entrance to the door. I found the window. But he says, there's no way I can find the keys for all these doors. You got to help me out. So the princess says, you know what? He says, you worked really, really hard. And you found this much. I'm going to tell you where to find the keys. And she tells him where to find the keys. He goes and he finds in some sort of hidden place. He finds like 1,000 keys. And he's like, what am I supposed to do with this? So every door, he's trying all the key. Every door, he's trying another key. And he's going through all the doors. And finally, until one door after another door, he's able to open it until he finally reaches a princess. And the princess says, Mazel Tov, let's make a l'chaim, this is our vart. So she calls the king, they send a message to the king. The king comes in, and the king says, you know what? Congratulations, you're going to be the one that marries off my daughter. This is really the story of the Jewish people. When the Jewish people went and they it wasn't just that they got the Torah. They had to go and they had to search for the Torah. It was difficult. God tested them. And we're going to see, the reason why I'm starting off with this story is we're going to see the test that God gave them. It wasn't so simple that the Jews just got the Torah. They got tested. Sometimes they failed. Sometimes they passed. Sometimes they partially failed. Sometimes they partially passed. They went and they got tested. And they have to find and search for it. And this is really the lesson of learning the Torah. When you learn the Torah, it doesn't come just easy. You have to go and you have to break your head over it. You have to go and you sweat over it. And then you go look and you learn and you study. And then what are you going to do? Then you have to pray. You have to pray like the future prince. Like this man went and kept screaming to the princess, please help me, please help me. And they kept, and finally what we do is we pray to God, please help us. And we pray and we pray and we pray and we study and we study and we study until eventually we got the Torah and we're able to get the Torah also in our day and age. So with that understanding, let's try to figure out some of the tests that the Jewish people went through in, after the exodus of Egypt. So now, where we left off from the previous series, or the hidden story of the Exodus of Pesach, was that the Jewish people collected all the spoils, all the wealth. The way it worked is that in the olden days, when the people went to war, they wanted to show confidence to their soldiers. So what did they do is they took all their wealth with them, and they displayed them showing that, look how confident we are that we're going to win, that we're putting all our money out there. It's like, I don't know if this is a good example. It's probably a bad example. It just popped into my head. Let's say you want to take a group of people to a very dangerous location you're a tour guide, and you want to take them to this location. But it's very dangerous. There's a lot of robbers, a lot of people that go and mugging over there. Just not a good area. So you go over there, and you tell the people, listen, we're going to go. And they go, like, no, listen, it's very dangerous. Just don't worry about it. This guy goes and straps on a suit that has a bunch of $100 bills just stuck all over his jacket.
Wow.
Just one of those. He says, listen. He says, you think I'll go with this jacket? Nowadays, it probably doesn't exist because you go anywhere. Even the upscale neighborhoods, people are going to, actually, I'm going to go off topic. They actually did a very interesting,
I saw that,
this was a while back. I may misrepresent this, but they did a sort of I don't know if it was a study or an experiment where they took a person and they put a bunch of money on him. And they went into I don't know if it was a wealthy neighborhood and a bad neighborhood. And there was like a homeless guy, and the homeless guy said, what's up with all your money? And he's like, listen, if you want, you could take whatever you want. So the homeless guy went and he took like a few dollars. And the guy says, you don't want to take any more? He says, no, I'll leave it for other people. And then they went to the rich neighborhood. And they had guys were there with business suits or a woman dressed very fancily, modestly, and they went and they started taking off. They're like, what is this for? So the guy told them, says, take as much as you want. And they just started taking off everything. And they show the difference. Look at the homeless guy. The guy who has nothing is willing to go and save it for other people. The guys who had everything that don't need this money, what do they need this money? For a Starbucks or something like that. So they didn't need the $40 that were on it to pay for a coffee over there. So they went and they started taking everything. But the guy that has nothing didn't take anything. The guy that has everything wanted everything. Mm-hmm. So the idea is that if you're walking into a place covered in money, either you're confident that you're not going to be murdered, or even more confident that no one's even going to take anything. So the way that they used to do is they wanted to get the soldiers in war, in fighting in general. It's a lot about psychological. The truth is in life, everything is psychological. So what they did was they wanted to show their soldiers, look how confident we are that we're going to win this war. That they took their entire treasure house. They went and they displayed all the gold and the jewels and every precious gem that they have, and they drove with it to war, showing that look how confident we are that we're going to go over there and we're going to come back as winners. However, the Egyptian army did not come back as winners. They came with all their wealth. They went and they sunk into the sea. Now, what did God do? God went and He took all the jewels and all the gems and all the gold that was sunk in the bottom of the sea. And when the Jews came on the other side of the sea, God went and made the sea spit out all the gold. So the Jews were collecting all the gold, and they were picking up all the money, all the jewels. Now, at this point in time, Moshe was, saying let's go, guys. We gotta go. We gotta get the Torah. We gotta, Andre. What is that? Andre. Is that right? He's like Andre. But in Spanish didn't come out yet. But still, he was saying Andre. Let's go. We gotta go. We gotta hurry up. So the Jews were sort of hesitant. They didn't want to go out. They didn't want to go. So there was a few reasons why they didn't want to go. So number one is because they were collecting cash from the floor. So they were like, but there's still stuff here. We still got to take the stuff. And they wanted to collect more and more money. There was another reason, is that when they came into the splitting of the sea and they sang Shirah, they sang, this is where Az Yashir Moshe, when Moshe and the entire Jewish nation sang Shirah, they had a revelation, they had a divine revelation. They saw they saw the Shekhinah. So there was a spiritual high that was associated with this place. And they were like, we don't want to leave this place. Like, this is like a very spiritual place. We just saw the Shekhinah over here. We want to stick around over here. There was a third reason that they didn't want to go, is that the Jewish people still had an emotional tie to the Egyptian society, to the Egyptian land for that matter. The way that I could explain it is like, sometimes you have people that are in a very, very abusive relationship, but they're so used to it that they can't leave. They're just used to the abuse. So they're used to it that they're sort of stuck in it, and they don't know anything else. So the Jewish people also, they were used to Egypt. They were used to being slaves. It was hard, even though it's freedom, but it was hard to break away from that. The fourth reason was the Jewish people thought like this. The Jewish people said, listen, let's think, smart for a second. God did so many things for us. What did he do? He went and he gave us the cloud, he gave us the clouds of glory. He went and he split the sea. He drowned our enemies. He gave us their treasures. He gave us prophetic inspiration. We have divine revelation over here. He says, listen, God is obviously on our side. He says, you know what we got to do? He says, we got to go back to Egypt. Egypt, how many men are left in Egypt? Everybody came to fight us. They're all dead. He says, we go back to Egypt. We conquer Egypt. That's our homeland now. Now we're the control and they're the slaves. This is what their Jews were thinking. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, listen, you can't go back. God said, in Exodus, it's chapter 14, verse 13, it says that you're never going to go, you're never going to be able to go back to Egypt. You're never allowed to even go back to Egypt. You're supposed to, leave Egypt and never return. And furthermore, Moshe Rabbeinu said, God took us out for what? To give us the Torah. He says, we have to go get the Torah. It's not going to conquer, Egypt. The way that the Jews were thinking about it, the Jews, they saw the Shekhinah, they saw the divine revelation. They didn't realize there is a higher level to go in spirituality. They thought like, yeah, we reached the top. Like, we literally saw the Shekhinah. Like, how higher can you go? And Moshe said, no. We said, we're going to go and get the Torah. There's a lot higher than that can be done. There are also, the idea that God told Abraham that he's going to give the children of Israel, his children, is going to give them the land of Israel. But they thought, what's the rush? We don't have to. He didn't say it has to be right now. And their thought was like this: let us go back to Egypt, easily conquerable. We'll go over there. We'll practice our fighting. We'll practice our war skills. When we're ready, then we're going to go and then we're going to attack the Canaan. We don't have to, to go and result to miracles. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, no, we have to go right now. We have to go get the Torah from Har Sinai. There was also a fifth reason why they wanted to say, the Imam laws bring this down, is that surprisingly, the Jewish people actually wanted to, well, I shouldn't say Jewish people, the people wanted to go, and you'll soon see why I just switched that. The people wanted to go back to Egypt to worship the Egyptian gods. And the question is obviously, like, what, are you kidding me? It's like, after everything that God did, they wanted to go back to the Egyptian God. And what's surprising, says the Imam law, is it brings down that Moshe Rabbeinu actually had a debate with them. He had a debate with them to prove them that all the Egyptian gods are false, they're nullified, they're nothing. Their only real God is only the God that took you out of Egypt. That's the only real God. Once he convinced them, then they left. Then they decided that they're going to agree with Moshe Rabbeinu, and they left. This is why it says in the pasuk in Shemot, in Exodus chapter 15, verse 22, it says, "Vayisa Moshe es bnei Israel miyam suf," and Moshe led the Jewish people away from Yam Suf. What is he that he led them? They should have said that they all traveled together because they were stuck to the place. They didn't want to leave. They were there. We just gave 5 different reasons of why they wanted to stay. But Moshe Rabbeinu had to convince them. Said, no. He says, we got to go. We got to go. And he gave them the reasons. And finally, they decided to went. The real kicker of why they left was they had the Ananei Kavod. They had the clouds of glory. And the clouds departed from that area. And they left to a different area. Now, the Jewish people, when they saw the clouds leave, they realized, okay, God wants us to follow the clouds. The clouds are associated with getting the divine presence. And this is why at this point in time, they did not question Moshe Rabbeinu. They saw the clouds leave, they just went. They went into the desert without they didn't start asking them, hey, what about food? What about water? We're going to the desert now. They didn't ask anything. This is why it says in Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 2, It says, I remember the chesed, the loving kindness of your youth. It says, you went and you traveled with me in the desert, in the barren land, without any question. You didn't. There was nothing sown there. There was no water. There was no food, and the Jewish people just followed Moshe Rabbeinu without any questions asked. So they went and they traveled for 3 days. They traveled for 3 days in this desert that is known as the Shur Desert. Now, why is it called Shur? This is based on the word Shur means it comes from the word Asherenu, which is from Bamidbar in Numbers chapter 24, verse 17. It says, "Ashurenu, I will see it." Because the real name of this desert was Etam. It was a different name altogether. But why did they call it Shur? Because the reason why the Shur means to see, like I said, the reason why the Jewish people left the shore and they followed into the desert is because they thought about this for a second. They said, listen, the clouds of glory is where we had the divine presence. So we have to follow the clouds of glory if we want to get the divine presence again. So the reason why they left is because they wanted to envision, they wanted to see the clouds of glory again. They wanted to see the Shekhinah. They wanted to see the revelation of God. So because they traveled into the desert because of what they wanted to see, so it was known as the Shur Desert. So they're traveling into this desert. Now, when they're traveling in the desert, it wasn't just, traveling in the desert is never just peaceful. But besides all the hardships of the desert, there were neighboring countries that they heard what happened to Egypt. And they were allies of Egypt. And they were like, well, listen, we're not going to just let this go. So they send people to attack, even though it wasn't full armies, because that only happened by, the first time was Amalek. But they sent people to attack the Jewish people. So they sent like lone, warriors to go and attack over here, attack over there. But what God did, was God went and he made, huge snakes and scorpions go and attack these people that came to attack the Jewish people. And now one person from the Jewish nation, even on the lowest level, was harmed from these, attackers, from these terrorists, if you could call them that. So they travel for 3 days, and on the 25th of Nisan, they arrived in a place called Marah. This is, Marah, it's bitter. What was going on over here? They traveled there, they were thirsty, they didn't have anything to drink. They came over there, and there was water over there. But the water was Marah, was bitter. That's why the place is called Marah, after the bitter waters. So the Jewish people, again, the people started, I have to correct myself, the people started complaining. Says, what's going on over here? We went and we don't have anything to do. Moshe Rabbeinu, what are you doing to us? The children are crying. The woman, we have pregnant women, they need to drink water, and there's nothing to drink over here. So Moshe Rabbeinu, Mount Moses brings down, Moshe Rabbeinu was looking at this and says, you know what? He says, why did God create water that's bitter in a desert? It makes absolutely no sense. And he was pondering on what's the reason that God created this water. So God came over to him and says, hey, listen, stop pondering the reasons of why what my ways are. Just pray, and then you'll come up with a solution. So Moshe Rabbeinu went, and he cried out to God in prayer. And God showed Moshe this tree, which had bitter wood. And he says, you take this wood, you write the Shema Mefurash, God's name, on this piece of wood, and you throw it into the water. When you throw it into the water, it's going to make it sweet. Now, what's very interesting is that this wood was extremely bitter. Not only was bitter, it was actually poisonous to the animals. And God commanded Moshe Rabbeinu to write God's name on it, throw it into the water. The water is going to turn sweet, and then the Jewish people are going to be able to go and drink this water. So really, what God was doing over here, God was testing the Jewish people. God was testing them and said, listen, and they kind of failed in a certain aspect. They said, instead of going, they came to the water. Instead of asking Moshe Rabbeinu for advice, what is the first thing they started doing? They started complaining. And because of their complaint, obviously there was a trigger effect that happened. But before we even begin to understand this concept, we have a very important question. There's a contradiction. We know at one point in Shemot, in Exodus chapter 14, verse 31, it says, "Vayiru Am es Hashem," and the Jewish people feared God, "Vayaminu ba'Hashem u'b'Moshe Abdoi," and they went and they believed, they had faith in Moshe, and they had faith in God. They believed in God, they feared God, and they had faith in God. So at one point we're saying that the Jewish people had faith and fear in God. Another point we're saying, and also Moshe Rabbeinu, not fear, but they had faith. And another point we're saying that the Jewish people complained against God. So which one is it? So really, the answer is that the majority of the people, and this is why I said the Jewish people, and I said, no, let me correct it. Because the majority of the people really did have faith. But there was a minority that didn't, and they kept on testing again and again. And who are these people?
Erev Rav.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Also,
It was Erev Rav.
Could it be, you said like one point it says they have faith, the other point you said not. Could it like be that it's like they had like emunah but not like bitachon, because that's like faith but not like in their hearts?
That's a very good point. That's a very interesting point. I would venture to say no, because the people that had faith, because you have to remember where they're coming from. They're coming from a place that they saw God in an unprecedented type of way. Like they saw so much. So I believe it was the difference of the people. And I think what I'm about to say might answer your question in a minor way. So Moshe Rabbeinu takes this bitter wood, throws it into the water, and the water turns sweet. But even though the water turned sweet, it still looked the same. It looked foul. It looked dirty. It still didn't look sweet, if I could say it that way. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, don't worry about it, drink it. And one person went and tried drinking it, and it was the most delicious sweet water that they've ever tasted. And once they did that, everybody started drinking, and it was amazing. Now, we have to try to break this down. Like, what was really going on over here? The Maggid of Mezrich goes and says like this. He says that the Jewish people came to the bitter waters. And what does it say when it came to the bitter waters? It says they couldn't drink it. Why? Ki marim heim. Because the waters were bitter. However, there's a different way to interpret these three words. Ki marim heim means that not only the waters were bitter, ki marim heim means also they were bitter. Meaning that the people were bitter. And this is also something that is historically that happened when the people left Egypt. It says that when people went through Yam Suf. So God made the greatest miracle of all times, split the sea. Can you imagine that? It was like, you're talking about like miles high of water just splitting. The Jewish people walked in, and it was like as if it was dry land. However, there were muddy parts. And the people complained, the people complained, well, it's muddy. Can you believe it? It's muddy. Like, are you serious? Like, you're seeing the greatest miracle of all times, and you're complaining that it's muddy? This is what I think. When I go on, let's say, on an airplane, I say this whole time because I think it's fascinating, and there's a little bit of turbulence, and you ask the person, so how was the flight? Well, they didn't give me the peanuts on time, and it was a little bit shaky at the time. In my mind, I'm like, if you've ever flown ever, you realize that you're flying on a missile, 500 miles per hour, 10,000 feet in the air, or 30, whatever it is. I don't know. I forgot the amount of height you're going over there, and you're complaining that it's a little bit shaky. Are you serious? I'm like, you're.
Thank God,
it's unbelievable. Yeah, but the reason really is that there are certain people that are negative people. Yeah. And there are certain people that are positive people. Negative people will complain about anything and everything. Positive people will always find something good to say. And I speak to many people, and at times I speak to people who have literally everything that they want, but yet they're always complaining. And then I speak to people who have nothing, and they're always so grateful to God and thankful to God. And I'm like, how does this work? I mean, here's a person that has everything and they're still complaining. Here's a person that has nothing and is so grateful. Because it depends not only what you have, it depends on your personality. It depends on person. And in fact, they did a study. There was a study that was done, and it was printed in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, that what you say about others really tells a lot about you. And how did they do this study? Is that they asked people to rate other people. And based on how they rated other people, they were able to go and understand on how they were. So if you rated a person positive and you had positive, understanding, you judge a person favorably, they realize that this person is more happier, has more emotional stability, they're more calmer, and so on and so forth. But if you rated the person negatively, there must be something also going on in your life. This is the concept of the very famous, I don't know if it's a story or a joke, that this wife comes into the kitchen. Husband's inside over there. The wife looks out the window, and she's looking at her neighbor. The neighbor's hanging out, the laundry, and she says, "Can you believe it?" He says, "I don't understand what's going on with this neighbor. Every time they do the laundry is dirty, and they're hanging it out." The husband sighs and continues drinking his coffee. The next day, come out over there, and she's like, "Again? Look," he says, "what's wrong with their washing machine?" Well, obviously, they don't have a washing machine. They're hanging. What's wrong with the way that they're washing it? Every day, it's dirty. Finally, after a few days of doing it, the wife comes in, and finally she says, finally, now they're hanging up clean laundry. says, you see, finally, they realized how to do laundry, and they're doing clean laundry. The husband said, listen, he says, nothing has changed. He says, all I did was I cleaned the windows. He says, the windows are dirty. That's why it looked like it was dirty before. So it all depends. Like many times in life, we see problems, but it depends on what are the windows, what are the glasses that you're looking. Sometimes you're going, anybody that wears glasses could attest to this. Sometimes you're looking and be like, wait a minute, he says, why can't I see clearly? And you're like, is something going on with my vision? And then you take off your glasses and you clean it, and you're like, oh, like there is light, Baruch Hashem, like it's amazing. Because in life, it's not really the situation that warrants your response. It's the type of glass that you're looking through. If you're looking through a positive lens, you're going to see things positively. If you look through a negative lens, you're going to see things negatively. And this happens in all aspects of life. You could have somebody could go on the greatest vacation ever, right? You could travel to Hawaii in first class, and everything is amazing, everything is unbelievable, yet they'll find, well, the food was not good, and it took me a long time, and I got burnt, and all the other things. Yet you could find somebody that took a trip to Detroit by accident. I don't know about Detroit, whatever, I don't know why I said Detroit. But you took a trip, and they had the greatest time ever. Like, what's the difference? Like, you have here the same person. It depends on the lenses that you're looking at. Negative people see things negative. Positive people see things positive. I can only say this story because that actually happened, somewhat to me.
It also is, you have to fake it until you make it. Even if you
it's true. Sometimes you do, right?
It's like wearing a smile makes you feel better.
Sometimes you do, and that's something that we spoke about last week. You fake it till you make it, or you fake it till you become it. But here's an interesting, Baruch Hashem, thank God this hasn't happened to me in a while, but this has happened to me before. So you walk into a place, and you walk in, you sit down. By me, it happened to be shul, and you take a sniff and be like, "Oh, it smells terrible. Like, what's going on over here?" And then you look over to the guy next to you and be like, "Are you kidding me? Like, when was the last time you showered?" In your mind, you don't tell us it. And you take a step away, and then you're like, "Wow." I'm not saying this happened to me, hypothetically. And then you take a few steps away and be like, are you serious? It still smells so bad. I'm like, what's going on over here? And you take a few steps further, and it still smells bad. I'm like, how is this aura of smell? Until you look down at your shoes, and you realize, this is before actually the law came out that you have to pick up your dog's excrement, until you realize, you're the source of the smell. It wasn't the other guy. It was you who was the problem. There are many times in life that you're going and you start blaming other people before looking at yourself. And you realize, wait a minute, maybe it's me that is the issue. So in a way, it was good that I walked away because now nobody else smelled what was on my shoe. But in essence, this is what we do all the time. We tend to put blame on things that we make an initial impression on. It's a while back. I haven't seen this guy in a while. There was a guy who dressed as if he was homeless. Possibly he was. He used to wear tablecloths under his jacket, and he would walk around during the streets. And when he came to the synagogue to collect money, everybody it was like Kriyat Yam Suf, right? Everybody just shifted to the side. He was able to walk wherever he wanted. And this was, this is not the way that you treat, even though they smell. And there was a few times that, I saw him in the street, so I stopped by and I said, do you need a ride somewhere? And so he got into his car. He had to, put all the tablecloths into the car. And he got into the car, and we drove it. And you think, okay, fine, my car is going to smell for a month now. It's not so bad. You roll down the windows within 10 minutes, the smell is gone. So what happens is people is that they see a first impression, they make a decision that they want, and that's it. It's impossible to change it. That person's not a human being anymore. That person doesn't deserve anything. The person doesn't shower. The person doesn't do whatever it is that you decide in your mind, and you judge a person based on that. But how many times do you judge a person based on your own psychological upbringing? There are many times that we judge a person based on our own perception. We don't judge a person correctly. We don't judge a person, favorably. We're judging based on our own upbringing. This person is not worthy, and this is why you have the upper class, the middle class, the lower class. It has nothing to do with the amount of money that you have, it's the amount of perception that you have. Do you think that you're better than everybody else? Do you think that you're in the middle of everybody else? Or do you think that you're lowest on the totem pole? So it really depends on where you're looking. This happens in all aspects of life. You can have somebody that $500 million in the lottery, and you see him complaining. He says, you know how much I have to pay for taxes? They're like, what? Who cares if you have to pay 40, 50%? You have $250,000. Like, why are you complaining? Because there's some people that are just bitter people. And there's some people that are just happy people. Now, when it says over here that the people complained, it says that the people complained against Moshe Rabbeinu. Rashi says that what was it they complained? They did not go to Moshe Rabbeinu and say, hey, Moshe Rabbeinu, listen, there's water over here. What should we do? Like, do you have any advice for us? No, they started complaining. Why? Because they found something that they wanted to complain about. When you want to complain, you'll always find a problem. You could be in this beautiful location, you can say it's too hot, it's too cold, it's not enough food, it's not blah, 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 blah. Whatever it is, it's too noisy, there's too many people screaming outside, which is true sometimes, but or you could be like, this is amazing. We have to thank, God. We also have to thank BJX and Bejo. We have to thank the people that gave us the ability to go and be in this type of place. Or you could be like, oh no, I can't believe this, I can't believe that, I can't believe this is so bad, I can't believe this is so terrible, it's cold, it's hot. You could definitely, you could do whatever you want. Oh no, I'm not saying that as a hint. I'm used to. When I come to certain classes, I know I'm going to sweat, and I'm fine with that. I came to the terminology. It's good. No, but you have to understand, because I get more reward if I sweat. So in a way, okay. So, bring it on. So, okay. So now, it was a very, very famous story that I said before, but it's very worth it to repeat again. Somebody went over to his rabbi and he says, Rabbi, you have to teach me, how do I understand life's challenges? So he says, listen, I can't have your answer. I'm going to send you to Reb Zusha. Go to Reb Zusha and you're going to go and he's going to answer your questions. So he goes over and he travels to this town where he finds a Reb Zusha and he actually asks the town. He says, where is Reb Zusha? He says, Reb Zusha. He says, you got to go to the poorest part of town and then ask them where to go. So he goes to the poorest part of town and he says, no, you got to go to, the poor people said you have to go to the poor part of town. Like, that's how poor Reb Zusha was. So he goes over to Reb Zusha's house. It's like there's no windows. Everything is freezing. Like in the olden days when people read books, right? And it was like a crooked house and there was no windows. The door was kept on swinging open and they had to close it with straw. Like it was raining from the roof. It was like that type of house. So he goes and he closes the door so he can knock on it and then the door swings open. Right? And then he comes in and Reb Zusha comes to the door and says, Reb Zusha, my rabbi sent me over here to teach me how to deal with the troubles in life. So Reb Zusha said, I don't understand. He says, why did he come to tell you to me? He says, like in his mind, he's like, I can think of a few reasons, but rabbi told me to come to you. And Reb Zusha says, I'm sorry, I don't know, like I never had a bad day in my life. And he says, and this guy was smart, this Chassid was smart. He says, okay, you realize what was going on. He says, this person, this rabbi, this righteous person, has obviously a very difficult life. But yet, in his mind, he never had a difficult day in his life. I mean, he has water leaking from the ceiling. He has never a difficult day in his life. We complain if the heating is not working for us. Call the hotel manager. I'm getting my money back. I'm going to sue them. I know a good lawyer. You're going over there. I'm like, you relax for a second. Take a deep breath over here for, what? All right, so you'll live. It's not life and death that's going on over here. But there's something very interesting when you dig into the story, that many people think like Reb Zusha overcame his suffering. He didn't overcome his suffering. That's incorrect when you're looking at this story that way. He didn't see his suffering to begin with. There was nothing that was suffering. Everything he saw was great. So when it's a different perspective in life that, okay, I see something bad, it's really good. No, you don't understand it. Nothing was bad for him. Everything was good. Bad didn't even begin. That's why if somebody would have came over to him and says, how do you go through your suffering in life? He said, listen, as you see, I've suffered, but I was able to overcome it. He didn't say that. What did he say? He says, I never had a bad day in my life, because every day that he had, regardless of the leaking roof, regardless of the swinging door, regardless of the no windows on the window, it was good. Everything was amazing.
Was that his personality, or was that because he learned a lot of Torah?
Because he worked on it. Yeah.
So
I haven't met a person yet that had that type of personality. Yeah, it's very difficult. Maybe he will.
He worked on himself to become like that.
Yeah.
Maybe he did see it as a struggle, but then later on he worked on it.
It depends on when he worked on it. If somebody goes, so it depends. Some people work, what you're asking is a very good question. Some people work on their problems when they have a problem. Some people work on the problems before they have the problems. So they work, for example, so sometimes I get people that I speak to them, and it's very obvious they need to practice that. They need to learn emunah and bitachon. That's what they need to do. So I tell them, this is what you need to study. This should be your focus in life. This should be your main focus. Other people, they realize they need to work on it before the problems come up. So they work on it, so when the problems come up, they know how to deal with it. Righteous people, the people that you're dealing with, our sages, they're not working on problems when it comes up. They're working on problems when they're learning on it. So when they learn it, this is really the fundamental thing when you're coming to a Torah class. When you're learning anything about Torah, it's not about listening to the class, getting entertained, or learning about something new, or understanding a concept. The main focus is taking something out of that class and implementing it into your own life. If you don't do that, you lost a very, very, very large part of the whole point of the Torah. The point is to learn it. So you have some people learn Emunah B'Tachon, but they don't really internalize it. They learn it, they like the stories, they like the concept, it's very nice, it's very warming for the heart, but they don't actually internalize it. Then you have the people that actually internalize it. Those are the people that actually developed a immunity to hardships in life because they worked on something before the problems happened. The correct way, which is the way the righteous people do it, is when they're learning the Torah, when they're learning everything about, being humble, not being angry, they're practicing what they're learning right then and there. They're not waiting for when the problem arises. So when you're looking at, let's say, the story of Rab Zusha learned about, obviously, Emunah and B'Tachon. He knew about all these things. So when the problem arose and it came up, he knew how to handle it. So yeah, you could say he worked on it, but it doesn't mean that he worked on it when the problem came about. Make sense? Okay, so now, let's try to understand what are the reasons that God made these bitter waters. So the first answer, I'll go through a few answers. The first answer I want to give you is from Rabbi Fran. Rabbi Fran says something very interesting. Moshe Rabbeinu goes to God and he says, listen, I sinned against you because I used the word as in a negative terminology. What did God, in Moshe Rabbeinu in Exodus, in Shemot chapter 5, verse 23, it says the terminology me'az, when Moshe Rabbeinu goes to God. It says, me'az, when I came before Paro, when you told me to go in front of Paro, that I should let the Jews out, what happened? Paro made it more difficult. Made it more difficult for the Jewish people. So instead of going and saving the Jewish people, you made it more difficult for them. So Moshe Rabbeinu used a derogatory term towards God, if I could say it that way, of the terminology me'az, from then. So now Moshe Rabbeinu says, now that, what am I going to do? I'm going to use the same words that I used as Yashir Moshe. Now Moshe is going to sing Shirah and going to sing the praises of God. Because in the beginning, me'az, first Moshe Rabbeinu saw the negative part of it. But now that he sees the positive, which we're going to soon explain, now as Yashir Moshe, now Moshe Rabbeinu is going to sing the Shirah and the prayer for God. Now, when Moshe Rabbeinu went and Moshe Rabbeinu prayed to God and said, listen, the Jewish people need water. There's only bitter water. What are we supposed to do over here? So what did God do? Showed him the bitter tree, take the bitter branch, throw it into the water, it's going to turn something sweet. Now, the normal procedure, if you take something bitter, let's say coffee for example, you don't make it more sweet by putting horseradish inside it, right? Because it doesn't make sense. It's just going to make it more bitter. If you want to make something bitter sweet, you take sugar, which is sweet, or honey, whatever it is, and you put, or Splenda, you're going to put it into the coffee, and that's, the sweet is going to make the thing that's bitter more sweeter. But what God did over here was did a miracle within a miracle. Because here you have like a large amount of water. You could dump 1,000 pounds of Splenda in that water, or honey and sugar and everything in that water. It's not going to make it. There's certain cases where it's like it's a lost cause. Like you could dump as much sugar as you want in here. It's not changing them. It's going to stay bitter. But what God did, something that the miracle was that not only God said throw something inside of it, throw something bitter. Even the sweet wouldn't have done anything. But throw something bitter inside of there and then see what happens. What was the lesson? There's obviously a lesson going on over here. The lesson is that sometimes in life, God is teaching us, is that the bitter thing that we see, that looks very bitter, and there's more bitter and more bitter and more bitter that comes into it, it's going to end up being very sweet. The things in life, the difficulties in life that we have, usually turns out sweet. It always turns out sweet. It's usually, I only say because sometimes we see it. Now, what did happen with Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Rabbeinu originally came in, and he saw the story in a chronological order. He says, I came, you told me to go to Paro. I went to Paro. Instead of making their workload lighter or letting the Jews go, Paro made the workload harder. So by me coming, I made it worse for the Jewish people. So why did you send me? And then what happens? And then the Jewish people left, and then they had the divine revelation, and they realized something very important. Originally, the Jewish people were supposed to stay 400 years in Egypt. Really, if you do the calculation, they did stay for 400 years. But it was supposed to be 400 years of slavery. But God saw something very, very imperative that the Jewish people, if they would have stayed any longer, they would have lost, they would have not been able to redeem. They would have went to such a low level, they would have been able to redeem. So what did God do? God took the slavery that they had, made it even stronger, so they don't have to stay a full term, a full sentence, and this way they're going to be able to leave. So when Moshe Rabbeinu comes in, and Moshe Rabbeinu says, Me'az, when I came over to Paro, I don't understand. But now that Moshe Rabbeinu, that all the Jews left, and they had the divine revelation, and they realized the divine plan, they says, you ever had that in life? Oh yeah, I kind of get that. Now that we see that the whole purpose that God made the work harder was that we would be able to get out. Otherwise we wouldn't have been able to get out. So now we see that the bitter was really sweet. And that's what God's trying to show over here. The bitter waters over here, sometimes you take the bitter waters, it's not bitter. It's only the bitter that you see right now, but in essence you'll see that it's really going to be, very sweet.
It's interesting to say that because now I'm like copying the concept of algebra, like equals positive.
That's very true. That's a good point. A negative plus a positive. This doesn't work in all areas in life. Because I've had this question come over to me. If I steal from somebody who stole something, double negative, I'm doing a mitzvah.
It means I think more that even like really painful, horrible things, like traumatic things that like feels like really bad, and like we think like it's bad, but like maybe it's like, I'm saying it is good, but like maybe God made it like happen like to us to make us better.
It's 100% true.
To like then do something.
So we see that all the time. Like how many times people go on a shidduch date and they think like this is the one, and then the guy or the girl, whatever it is that you're listening, like they break up and they break the heart, and they're like, I can't believe this would happen. And only like back then it's like very difficult, and only later, like after like 5-10 years, whatever it is, you realize that everything happened was really for the best. And it's business opportunities. You go into a business opportunity and it fails, and you're like, I can't believe this happened. But then eventually you see that because of that, something amazing happened. In life, that's the way usually that it works. That you'll see like bad things happen, you'd be like, I don't understand God, like why did this happen? But then you go down the line and you look back, and I really recommend people to do this, because I've done this myself, and it's amazing. You look back in life and you be like, why did I do this? Like, how did I end up over here? And you realize like how God was orchestrating, pulling all the strings to get you to where you are. And there was no way that you were going to get in here unless you had all that bad. You would have been stuck in that situation unless the bad came. So this is a lesson really for life. Okay, so now another reason why God made this bitter waters. The Jewish people realized that they came over there, they're traveling in the desert for 3 days. They didn't have any water, they didn't have anything. And finally they came to the water and they saw that it was bitter. So they came to the point, to the realization that everything is all dependent on God. Everything depends on God. So they started going, they started praying to God. They realized that in this way, when they had the faith in God, they receive the merit that, furthermore, that they will be able to have more miracles happen to them, and that they will be able to receive the Torah. God tested them in a way to see how they're going to go and how they're going to react. Another reason also is that they did not study the Torah, and that they had parts of the Torah, they didn't study it. And because they didn't study it, by the way, they didn't study, we said they traveled for 3 days. They didn't study for 3 days. That's why the sages implemented that within 3 days, there is a Torah reading in shul. So you have Shabbat, you have Monday, and you have Thursday. So you don't go 3 days without hearing words of Torah, even though you're not supposed to go even 1 day without hearing words of Torah. But the minimum is it's not even the minimum. It's the minimum should be minimum. You can't have even 3 days that you don't learn Torah. So now we know the Torah is likened to water. So because the Jewish people, instead of going and studying the Torah, what they were talking about previous, they're talking about the past, what they're going to do, what they did, instead of discussing the Torah, so because the Torah is likened to waters, because they starved themselves of the spiritual waters, God took them away, it starved them from the physical waters as well. Now what did God do? God made them throw a tree branch into the water. Why a tree branch? Because I know it says in Mishlei, in Proverbs, chapter 3, verse 8, it says, Etz Chaim hi lemachazikim ba. The Torah is known as a tree of life. It's a tree of life. Why else? So God's telling them, hey, listen, you want to get everything back, take the tree of life, take the Torah that you have, you put it into the bitter, you'll realize the sweet. Because the concept is very simple. It's mentioned again and again in Torah. If you follow the Torah, all will be sweet. If you don't, if you stray, it's going to be bitter. And again, we see these lessons that come up in the Torah. Another reason is, a very fascinating reason, is that God wanted to show them something. And this is really parallel to the plague of the blood. Now what happened to the plague in the blood? God went and God took clear, pure, crystal water and turned it something that's undrinkable. You can't take the good water, and he turned it into bad water. So what did God do now? It says God was showing them that he could do miracles that contradict one another. He took good water, and he made it bad. Now he's going to show you how he's going to take bad water and make it good. To show you the power of God is above and beyond. Everything is capable in God's hand. God was teaching the Jewish people a lesson, one after another, to show the Jewish people the capabilities of God. God is capable of everything. You're in the worst situation, he can make it the best. You're in the best situation, he can also make it to the worst. Everything is possible. Additional reason is that the Egyptians were talking bad against the Jewish people. They went and they said that the Jewish people were committing adultery. And you know the way that it works. When somebody says something, it sticks in your mind. Imagine somebody comes over, not to you, imagine somebody comes over to somebody else and says, you know, your spouse, you know what they do really at work, right? I mean, like, you know, right? Like, I'd be like, no, what do you mean? What are they doing? Like, no, nothing. I didn't mean anything. What? Someone's calling me. I gotta go, right? And you just like, run away. Now, what's that person gonna think? The worst. Because it's going to blow your mind, like, what do you mean? What are they doing? What are they doing? Like, what's going on? Like, the second that you implant a thought in your mind, your mind runs with it. And it goes on and to who knows where. So the Jewish people were, spoken about by the Egyptians, be like, oh, well, they committed this one is not really faithful, and this one's not really faithful, and this one's not really faithful. So in their minds, it started playing games. So what did God do? It says that God tested them with this water. Well, how did he test them? He did something very, very amazing. We know that if, let's say, a woman the Torah tells us if a woman is suspected of being unfaithful, she's known as a sotah, right? So there's a sotah water. Now, what do they do with the sotah water? They take a water, they write God's name in it, they put it in the water. Now, the woman drinks this water. If the woman did not commit to any adultery, did not commit anything bad, then the water is going to be very beneficial for her. If it's not going to be bad, if she did do something wrong, then it's going to cause her to, explode basically and die, the nicest way possible. So, what did God do? It says the Jewish people, they were nervous now about it. So God made all these bitter waters sotah water. We said that Moshe Rabbeinu took the tree. What did he write on it? He wrote the Shema Mefurash. He basically, God made sotah waters. So he made the sotah waters over here. Everybody drank from it. The men, the women, everybody drank from it. When they saw that nobody went and nobody died from it, so now this solidified all the relationships. So now you can begin seeing the good really that it's in the bad.
So they didn't commit adultery?
None of them committed adultery. One of the reasons that they were able to leave Egypt is because they refrained from immoral acts.
So then what made them be on the 49th level of Tumah?
Oh, so they did, so one of the things is Zeh Avodah Zarah, and Zeh Avodah Zarah, they committed, they worshipped idols. They did things that brought them to the lowest level, but not that they committed all the worst sins possible.
So our generation now would be compared to.
Can I say no comment? Am I allowed to say no comment? You know what? Hold that question. Let me speak about it at the end of class. So no, let's finish this and then we'll speak about that comment. So now, question. So what happened was over here, originally, they came into the waters. It's bitter. God, what's going on over here? But meanwhile, the relationship had some strain in it. Now all of a sudden, God took the name, put it into the water. Now the water turned into sotah water. Now everybody drinks the waters. Now everyone says, aha, you see, over here. So now all of a sudden, there's shalom. Everybody's happiness. So a happy wife, happy life. Happy spouse, happy. It works both ways. So all of a sudden, the bitter waters turned sweet in more than one ways. They started seeing that instead of the utter despair that they had with this water, it was really all for the benefit. And the final second to the final reason is that the Jewish people realize is that in life they're going to go into some difficult situation. God was like training them. Then when there's a difficult situation, you pray. And what happens when they pray? We saw over here, God answered them immediately. So you pray, God answers. That's the way that, so the Jewish people were being taught, they were strengthening their faith, conditioning them to accept the Torah and realize and understanding their faith as well. And finally, the final reason is that they came to the realization that the water, God threw this, God told Moshe Rabbeinu to throw this, piece of wood inside over here. And this wood had God's name in it, but the water still looked dirty. and they drank it and it was really good, it was really beneficial for them. God was teaching them, they thought that was going to make them sick. They thought that it was going to make them, it's going to harm their body. God was teaching them, it's not the sicknesses that harm your body, it's not the diseases, it's not the food, it's not the drinks, it's not anything, it's only God that either causes you to get sick or causes you to get healthy. Obviously, you have Ishtadlut, you have to do it, and the Gemara says also, there's only the hot and cold, whatever. We're not going to get into all that detail, but bottom line is everything is from God. Everything is from God. So this is why it says that this is why it says which pasuk is this from? It says over here in Exodus chapter 15 verse 26. It says, "Vayomer im shema tishmo lekol Hashem Elokecha." If you go and you listen to the voice of your God, va'ayasha be'enav ta'aseh, and you're going to do what's righteous in the eyes, va'azanta, and you're going to listen lemitzvotav, to His commandments, shamata, and you're going to guard kol hachukav, all the laws. Then what did God say? Kol ha'machla shesamti b'mitzrayim lo asim alecha. All the sicknesses, all the diseases that I put on Egypt, I'm not going to put on you. Ki ani Hashem alfecha, because I am God, your healer. Now what's going on over here? Why specifically did God say all the sickness that I put on Egypt, I'm not going to put on you? It's very obvious, because the Egyptians, did they die from natural death or unnatural death? It was unnatural. There was nothing natural about it. God says there's nothing natural about the world. Everything comes from God. Everything comes from God. So if you go and you listen to the Torah, then just like the Egyptian, what it was very obvious, it was all from God, really everything is all from God. So if you listen to the Torah, if you follow the commandments, then all the sicknesses and diseases that I put on Mitzrayim, just like all the sicknesses and diseases, they're all supernatural. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to put on you. Why? Because I'm God, your healer. Hold your question. We're almost finished, and then we're going to open up for questions. So, the final thing that I want to speak about is that God gave them, at this location, God gave them a preview of Matan Torah. He gave them actually some commandments. Until now, they had the Shabbat mitzvahs b'nei Noach. God also gave them the mitzvah of kibbut av va'em, honoring your parents. Also the mitzvah of Shabbat. There was also dinim, civil and business law that they gave them. It was circumcision, gid anasher, the red cow, the red paraduma, I don't know, red heifer, I don't know how to pronounce this, right? The red cow, right? Paraduma. Gave them a few laws over here that they should go and they should in Marah, in this location, the bitter waters, in this location of the bitter waters, before Har Sinai. This is all before Har Sinai. So, at this point in time, also God taught them that a lot of different things about like the plants. Like this plant is good for this plant is edible, this plant is poisonous, this plant has this medicinal cure, this plant stay away from it. He was teaching the different things. King Solomon also had this knowledge, and he put together something called the Sefer HaRefuot, the book of remedies. He was able to go with this book. Any problem that you had, you were able to go and see the natural remedy for it, and you'll be able to heal. However, by the time of King Chizkiah, he went and he hid it. Why did he hid this book? Because people were no longer praying to God anymore. When somebody got sick, they normally prayed to God and God would heal them. But now they had the book. Why do you need to pray to God? They had everything that was going for them. So they went and they stopped praying for it. So King Chizkiah saw that they were stopped praying for it. So what did he do? He went and he hid the book so people go and start praying for it again. This is the similar story that we had with we said this before regarding a person who wanted to learn the language of the animals. So he wanted to learn the language of the animals, and he begged someone who knew about, teach me about the language of the animals. He didn't want to, the guy was a pest, he was a nudnik. And finally he said, fine, you know what, I'll teach you the language of the animals. And he taught them the language of the animals. This guy's walking home one day, he overhears the birds talking. He says, this guy, which is his name, he hears his name, so he's listening, and he says, his barn is going to burn down today. He says, my barn is going to burn down today. That night he takes out all the animals from his barn, and he puts them in a different location. That night his barn burned down, and he's like, Yishtabach Shemo, this is amazing. Look, I saved myself from the disaster of that. Thank God that I learned the language of the animals. The next day he's walking out in the forest, he overhears other animals talking and says, today this guy's prized possession, his main horse, is going to go and is going to run away. So he went and he made sure that everything was locked, everything was stayed, that the horse is not going to run away, and his horse didn't run away. And he's like, this is amazing, I'm saving myself from so many hardships. So one hardship after another hardship after another hardship, the guy saves himself. Finally, one time he goes and he overhears this, the birds talking, and he says, listen, he says, now this person, he hears his name, his son is going to die tonight. So the guy's like, how am I going to protect that? He runs over to this wise man. He says, listen, you got to help me out over here. He says, I fixed everything that the birds and the animals told me, but now I don't know what to do. He says, they told me that my son is going to die. How am I supposed to protect that? So the wise man says, listen, he says, why do you think God was sending you all these tribulations? He's sending you, so you should do tshuva, you should repent against yourself. But you thought you're smarter than God. You went and you decided you're going to steal, you're going to move all your animals away from over here. You're going to prevent your horse from running away. You're going to prevent all the problems from happening, but you didn't fix yourself. If you didn't fix yourself, so finally God's going to have to do something that you can't take away. And this is really the story of our life. There are many times in our life that we have hardship after hardship after hardship. But God is sending us signs. We have to wake up. Instead of saying, you know what? Maybe I need to move. I changed my zal. I have to do this. Maybe keep Shabbat. Maybe keep kosher. Maybe keep tzniut. Maybe do things that you're supposed to do. Instead of starting to worry about all the things that you should be changing, maybe think about in the spiritual aspect, what am I supposed to be doing? Obviously, if you have to change something in a physical sense, change it. But the bottom line, everything that happens, there's a spiritual root and cause that happens to it. So God was teaching them a very, very important matter over here. God was teaching them that everything is in the Torah. Everything is in the Torah. All the remedies, all the problems, everything is over here. If you follow the Torah, if you follow the laws and the commands that I give you, you'll be good. You'll be golden. You'll be solid. If you do not follow the Torah, if you go against, you're going to be smarter than God. You have a connection to God that you can do whatever it is that you want. Guess what? There are going to be reminders. Unfortunately, we don't want these reminders, but they're going to come if you don't listen to God. And if you don't listen to God, this is what's going to happen. So learn the lesson beforehand. Learn the lesson from the story of Marah. This is the lesson that God gave them before they got the Torah. The lesson is that you have to realize that everything is in the Torah. Your whole life, your happiness, everything is right over here in the Torah. If you learn it, good. If you don't, may God have mercy on your soul. Questions? Yeah, you had a question.
Two things. I learned, Rabbi Nachman says that unhappiness causes illness. So I don't know, just a point to add, and also depression, whatever, being sad, and also if Hashem said that, why do rabbis get ill? I'm saying.
So I'm happy that you actually brought this up. So there are many reasons. Let's just be very, 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 very clear. No one is God as accountant. No one's going to say, you know why this happened? Because da, da, da. There are many things. You have rabbis that get sick, they lose money. They have righteous people that have very terrible lives. Only God knows the answer. Sometimes it's for this reason, sometimes for that reason. There's so many reasons that go for it. But one thing you know is that if you follow the Torah, then you won't get harmed. Oh, but you see people that follow Torah that they somehow get harmed. Yeah, there's calculations for everything. It could be a previous life. It could be whatever. Who knows? We cannot give the answers. It could be that the harmful is really good. It could be the harmful is really bad. Whatever it is, we don't know. But one thing we do know is what God told us straight forth in the Torah. If you follow my commandments, I'm not going to put any of the sicknesses of Egypt on you.
So then, why do it if righteous people get ill? Sorry, it's just.
Your question is but after all that, but still why?
Yeah.
Right. No, your question is a good question, and I can only answer with, I'm not God's accountant. I have no clue. I don't know why bad things happen to good people. I mean, we gave plenty of answers in the classes that we gave on that. We gave in the divinity series, and we have a previous class on that.
Right. Before.
So,
whatever.
Next year. Not next year, meaning in the next world.
It could be. Yeah, it's very possible. It's going to be for...
Why bother being good if good people get really bad things?
In general, if you look at it, there's always exceptions to the rules. In general, good people have it good, bad people have it bad. There's always exceptions to the rule. And how do I know that? Oh, but you could start giving... When you start speaking to a lot of people, you start realizing, people think, well, people really have it good, they don't really have it so good. Or when people really have it bad, they really have it pretty amazing. So it's not about money, it's not about health, it's about the overall, concept of things. The overall picture, thank you. So, yeah. And then you made a comment, nowadays. Where are we nowadays? I wanted to bring it up. Where are we nowadays? If we fell into the 49th level, in the time when we left Egypt, so what are we doing nowadays? So, first of all, there is a very, 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 very large difference, huge difference between us and Egypt. Does anybody know what the difference is?
We have the Torah.
Excellent. Very good.
Oh.
And nowadays we have the Torah. So
they also had their version of Torah, though.
They have the Shavuot mitzvahs, but they have the things that were brought down with them. But the Torah it makes a whole world of a difference. So before we don't even have to even delve in that, because in essence, yes, we're in a generation that has a lot to improve, but at the same point in time, we're in a generation that's doing so much amazing things. Look how much yeshivot there are. Look at how many people are coming back, to the religion. The people that fell off either from communists, from World War II, from whatever it is that they went through in their life, their grandchildren, their children are coming back to Judaism. So you have something that even though we would think that, yeah, we're on a low spiritual level, but look at the positive that we have nowadays. Look at the amazing things that the Jewish people are doing. The Jewish people, even on the lowest of the lowest level, that we're able to come back closer to God. This is the first time in history where the children are bringing the parents back to religion. When did you have this ever before? You have the children being more religious than the parents. It's something that's unprecedented. So even though we could say we're at the lowest level, but we're doing amazing things. Baruch Hashem, Ken Yibu, may God help us go and continue to grow in this way. And this way, we'll hopefully bring the Mashiach in the good way, not in the bad way. That because good Mashiach come either from the good or from the bad. Either we fall too low or we get too high. So B'ezrat Hashem, we come from the good way that we don't have to follow all the Chevle Mashiach that we have to deal with.
Man.
Yeah.
So what trait did they have to deserve,
Yeah.
like, to get the Torah and
So you mean what?
that we don't have? Because we're...
Why did they merit the Torah?
Why did they merit? So
I was actually thinking that, yeah.
first of all, there was a few reasons why they merit to go and leave Egypt. Right, so we know they went to the lowest of low. They didn't, they didn't change their names and change language, whatever. All the things that they merited to be able to go out. But there was two aspects that we have to focus on over here. Number one is what I just said, but regarding the things that they merited. But number two, probably more important thing is that God had to speed it up that they would leave, because if they wouldn't have sped it up, they would have been stuck there forever. Meaning that God was going to give the Torah to the Jewish people. Now the question was when. Now, if God would have waited, we would have fallen too low and we wouldn't have been able to receive it. So we came to the point that we needed to leave to get it out in the most, it was more from the negative angle from the positive angle. Like we came to such a low level that if God wouldn't take us out, we would have never been relieved. So it's not in the essence of what we do till we deserve it, even though, what did we do to deserve anything? In life, that's really, we don't deserve anything. But what happened this way versus what happens could happen in Mashiach, either from the positive or the negative. Either we're going to fall to the lowest level and then God is going to take us out, or we're going to go from the highest level and God is going to take us out. However, we don't want to fall to the lowest level. Because we see in Egypt, even though, the Exodus and all this sounds amazing and fluffy and it's amazing, and it's beautiful, in a certain aspect. But at the same point in time, 80% of the Jewish people didn't make it out there. So, the Egyptian, there was a lot of deaths that were going on over there. So it wasn't the most, optimal solution that we could think of in our own human logic. Obviously God has, we can't question God. Everything that God does is a reason and purpose for it, and even though we know the reason and the purpose, but we would want it to happen from the positive way, that we don't have to go to the extent that we went from the negative way. And this is where Mashiach comes. It could be in two angles as well. It could either be from the negative angle, and it's going to be wars and hardship and that, or it could be from the positive angle, where everybody comes in, does tshuva, and they come to realization of the one God, and then we're going to realize Mashiach in the most harmonious way possible. Yeah.
Before, when you were saying like the people and not the Jewish people, you just meant the group in Erev Rav?
Yeah. Maybe I wasn't clear on that. So thank you for bringing that up. So the Erev Rav in general were the ones that were causing the problems. All the time. Not
the ones that wanted to stay.
Yeah, all the problems, right? Majority is the Erev Rav. It's still spilled over to the Jewish people, but the majority of the issues over here, but they converted, so they were considered as the Jewish people. So the majority of the issues was the Erev Rav.
But at what point were we the Jewish people? Is this before all this, or only after we got the Torah?
So your question is a good question. When is a Jew considered a Jew? Is Avram a Jew? That's a good question. It's a whole class in itself. Yeah, it's a good question. It was, Avram was Ivri. When it was a Jew, the Jews go through. The bottom line is that there was some sort of a conversion going on in Har Sinai, which we're not going to get as a whole class in itself.
Why do we? Sorry, go.
Because if we weren't labeled Jew, how did the Egyptians differentiate you be a slave because you're a Jew?
We were known as Bnei Israel. Bnei Israel was the children of Yaakov Avinu. Okay. So we were in Goshen, we were in that, it was different. We separated to a certain extent from there. So they knew who was, they didn't call them Jewish, or, they called them, Ivri, or whatever it was that they, yeah. So but there was a very differentiation, a very, fine, strong, thick line between the Egyptian and Jewish.
They weren't keeping Shabbat yet.
Right, so they weren't keeping all the commandments until they got it. They kept the certain things that they kept, but the Torah wasn't given yet. So who kept the Torah, the commandments? We know the Avraham Avinu, Yitzchak Avinu, Yaakov Avinu. They kept the Torah. They kept the laws that they kept. But to a certain extent, when the Jewish people went, they didn't. They lost a lot of it. That's why God had to teach them. For example, He taught them on over here before they came to this location of the bitter waters. God taught them they also had a few laws, and then God taught them a few laws over here. And we'll see as time goes on, God teach them until they got to Har Sinai, where they receive everything. Question, yeah.
No, like you like kind of like answered it. I was gonna ask like, why do we learn like about like Avram, like all that if like they like weren't like Jewish per se? But yeah.
Okay, so because I could go on a different. Well, in essence, since Adam HaRishon we're learning about it, because there are things that we're not learning about history. It's very, very important when you're looking in the Torah, even though there's a lot of historical facts in it. It's not a history book. It's a book. It's a sefer. It's a divine book. That's information to go and give us to better our lives. There's a reason why we know about Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Reason why we know about Adam and Noah. There's everything. There's lessons and there's important things to learn from these things. So, why we're learning about it? First of all, they're our ancestors. Noah, Adam, everybody is our ancestors, and there's maybe we could do a class about this once, about like how things change over time and how like from Adam HaRishon, how God allowed people to have the free will but yet orchestrated. It's a fascinating idea when you think about the big picture as opposed to the little picture of where you're going right now and how the world went in the chronological order.
So then Goyim could like also learn it because if it's just like a book to like help us.
So Goyim non-Jews are able to go and learn the 7 Noachide laws, where they were commanded to, and they're able to learn the written law. The problem is that they're not able to learn the oral law, is where they have,
Oral law is Mishnah?
Mishnah, Gemara, yeah. No, yeah, anything oral, yeah.
And like Midrashim and stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah, to a certain extent. Any question?
So you said they weren't allowed to go back to Egypt. Does that apply to now?
To a certain extent, yeah. People are not supposed to go back to Egypt.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Chacham Ovadia Yosef has a long tshuva on this, on what he's supposed to do, to what extent, and what that's a whole long topic in itself, if you're allowed to go back to Egypt, yeah.
But what was considered Egypt? Is Egypt now?
That's a good question.
Or was it?
There are, and there are reasons. There's exclusions that apply to this. It's a long topic in itself. Chacham Ovadia Yosef has a whole thing on it, on this thing. It's a very interesting topic. Are you allowed to go back to Egypt? What's the extent of it? Generally speaking, the simple answer is no. You're not supposed to go back to Egypt. But you can ask all your questions. Yeah, what is Egypt now? What was Egypt back then? Whatever. There's a bunch of discussions to have on it, but it is a topic to discuss.
Cool. Back to the Arab part, how they were they sort of like doubting God, even though like after everything that just happened, we're not so sure about God? To a certain extent, you kind of could say that why are they doubting God, and in a certain extent you see that there are ones, I don't know if we'll get to speak about the golden calf, the Egel. It depends how much time we have. Because I know there's an answer to the question of like how could they have sinned after everything that just happened. Right. So this is my goal. My goal is to get to Har Sinai. If we finish it earlier, then we'll continue with the hidden story until Shavuot. We'll do maybe the golden calf and we'll see what happens after it. There's an answer, right, to like how could they have sinned? Right? Yeah. There's a reason of why. Yeah. There's a reason for how. I don't want to get into it, but there was sort of they did it out of, if I could say, like out of the goodness that they were trying to, they lost Moshe Rabbeinu as an intermediary, so now they were using the golden calf as an intermediary. Whatever it was, they had their calculations that they had it. But we'll speak about it when we speak about it, if we will speak about it. There's other time when we speak about it. I was sort of going to say that, like, if like after the Jews saw all of that, all the miracles, everything was plain out simple and like. How did they mess up? Right. No, my thing is like compared to our days when everything is not as clear. How could we be expected to be as to do more or to be as faithful? Right. So your question is an excellent question. The question is, to clarify, is that if back then they messed up and they saw all this, and how are we expected to do that? So there's a few reasons why. Number one, right, we don't see the, what did you say? The sea splits. Right, we don't see splitting of the sea. So the number one, this is why it's so important to learn about the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, because there's lessons to be learned from it. Now, even though you didn't see it, but your grandparents and great-great-grandparents, they all saw it. And it's specifically said that the whole nation witnesses. It's not just one, meaning a miracle that you cannot even begin to comprehend. It's a miracle that only that
you can't make it up, because the whole nation, 600,000 men, you're talking about millions of people, if you take the younger children and the older adults and the women, involved here, saw these miracles, and they transmitted to their children. These things are not made up. So there is lessons that we're learning from it. So we're learning from things that not to happen. Now, granted, we're not on the level that we were there, before, but everything in life we should know about it. The Tanakh tells us, Zelu mat zeh bara Elokim. God created everything as an equal playing field. So even back then, for example, that they saw all these miracles, there was magic very prevalent at that time. So how do I know it's magic? How do I know it's not? So nowadays, you could see miracles and be like, oh no, it's science. So everything in life is all about the test. The test, yes, granted, we're not even the dust of the feet compared to our ancestors on the level that they were. But that's what we have to learn about. That's what we have to study about, and that's what we have to create from it. And God is going to judge us accordingly. To what to the certain extent, I forgot which great sage said this, that in the olden days doing a mitzvah doesn't compare to the reward that doing a mitzvah nowadays. Because in the olden days, they're on a level, but nowadays we're such on a low level that every small mitzvah that you do is considered huge. It's amazing. You did this mitzvah. It's unbelievable. So everything is accordingly.
I also think that depending on how much you do and each level you grow, Hashem expects so much more.
That's true. A righteous person, God expects more. That's everything in life. A CEO, you're getting paid more, but you're expected more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if every mitzvah is worth more than theirs, why are we still in
Here.
exile?
Any minute. It's any minute. Any minute we're going out of this exile.
We are very close.
How do you know, Ben? That's how you should know. Now, how do you know if you have a question? This is a little bit of some people could take this too far of an OCD way, but how do you know if you go... why is everybody laughing in here? Is everybody here OCD? Everybody's OCD. Okay. So, because if you think about something that you're like, should I do this good deed or should I do this bad? You're thinking about it, that one good could tip the scales for everything. So it's all balanced on your thing.
I should just this because...
Yes, that's the right answer.
Yeah. I guess the lesson that I learned was that the Jews are going to get everything that's meant for them, even sweet water. But either the good way or the bad way depends on...
That's very true. Right. Very true. I like the way that you said that. The bottom line is that what God wants is going to happen. Depends how you're going to get it. There's a good cop and there's a bad cop. Who do you want to speak to? You want to go the good cop? You want to do the bad cop?
I guess that all depends on how...
Everything depends on us. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Chazak Baruch.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.